Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, a state of calamity in Abra following a strong earthquake. Thousands in evacuation centers in northern Luzon. A senator is now calling for disaster preparedness. Also, the 19th Congress begins with a new Senate leadership. What are their priorities amid the challenges hounding the nation? Senate President Pro Tempore Loren Legarda joins us live.
Meron pa!
A state of calamity has been declared in the province of Abra, the ground zero of a magnitude 7 earthquake that hit this week. This will now give the provincial government the power to tap into its calamity funds. President Bongbong Marcos led the inspection of damaged areas and visited some evacuees in Abra on Thursday. He also ordered agencies to immediately restore water supply in the province. A senator is now calling for disaster preparedness following this magnitude 7 quake. She says the country still has a World Bank loan that can be used for disaster response. The four-term senator assumes her new post as Senate President Pro Tempore. What are her priorities in the 19th Congress? Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Senate President Pro Tempore Loren Legarda. Senator, welcome to the source. It's good to see you again.
Good morning, Pinky, and all those in CNN and watching you today. Maganda umaga po. Sana po'y nasa mabuti kayong kalagayan ngayong araw na ito.
To you too, Senator. Let's start with the earthquake that happened this week. Tell us, so far, how do you assess the government's response?
First of all, we know that natural hazards and human-induced hazards are here to stay because of our location, because we have a fault, because we are in the Pacific Ring of Fire, because we are in a region of the world that is considered one of the most vulnerable. And so institutionalizing preparedness, not just response, is essential. And this is a plea, not just today as the quake in northern Luzon had happened, but more than 20 years ago. Now, my assessment, I think the reaction was quick. We saw the national government coming to the aid and responding right away, in the DSWD deploying what's needed. I recall, Pinky, in the State of the Nation address last Monday, the president mentioned about the importance about pre-positioning family packs and goods in areas where there are warnings. These warnings can be made if it is, for example, a typhoon, a storm, rains, habagat, amihan. But of course, for earthquakes, that cannot be predicted. But always having a decentralized type of assistance to our local governments would be important. Second, the declaration of a state of calamity is essential for the local governments to be able to utilize the funds lodged in the LGU and in the NDREAM fund, which is enacted by law since 2010, so that they could use it for rehabilitation, reconstruction, and the immediate needs of our people in the quake-stricken areas.
Yeah, we talk about food and water. The president already ordered that these areas need water filtration systems that need to be even purchased as soon as possible. But after that, really, Senator, is the problem of the residents there who cannot go back to their homes, either because they are partially or completely damaged. What kind of help can government give these residents? I talk about this, Senator, especially to those who have given much of their income, their money, their savings to build homes, and yet now you have partially or even completely damaged homes.
Yes, whether it's an earthquake, Pinky, or a strong storm or even a storm surge, we see that homes and infrastructure are damaged. And so building right at first sight, aside from building back better, is essential. But your question is, right now, what help can we do? So we do a post-disaster needs assessment. Ilan ba ang pamilyang naapekto? At meron ba tayong mga evacuation center, hindi lang sa panahon ng mga bagyo, na pwede na silang paglagyan ng komportable para sila ay dun manatili habang tinutulungan mag-rebuild ng mga bahay. So it is important that every local government, not just in the regional level, but provincial, even municipal level, have temporary, decent, gender-sensitive housing or evacuation areas when any of these natural hazards strike us, whether it is a earthquake, a typhoon, or even a volcanic eruption. And so my question is, I wonder if Abra has an evacuation center, and we must look into the utilization of either national or local government funds for the construction of permanent evacuation centers in areas which have been vetted through an environment impact assessment. But of course, we cannot build evacuation centers on fault lines or on areas that are susceptible to flooding as well. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. The World Bank, you're saying the country still has a World Bank loan that can be used for disaster response. Tell us more about this, Senator.
Thank you for asking that. I'm happy to report that late last year, after Odette, and in January of this year, a 500 million US dollar loan was approved. I believe a concessional loan, is that what we call it? And the Philippine government was able to draw down only a part of it. If I'm not mistaken, 200 million. In fact, the 200 million was supposed to have been drawn down within 48 hours of the approval of the loan to the Treasury, to the DBM, and to the agencies that will utilize it. So I would like to know whether $200 million was actually used already for Odette rehabilitation. Now, there is a 300 million US dollars still pending that can be utilized immediately for Northern Luzon and the Cordillera earthquake. And I'm referring to the Philippines 4th DRM policy loan with a catastrophe drawdown option. And this was, as I said, after Typhoon Odette in December last year and after the declaration of a state of calamity, which was done last year. So the 200, that has been drawn down, but utilization, I am not certain. Now, the 300 million, that is a standby facility, which if utilized or even advised to the World Bank, can probably be drawn down within 48 hours. That is the information conveyed to me by Ms. Leslie Cordero of the World Bank, who's based in Singapore, in charge of our loan portfolio.
And Senator, if the 300 million can be utilized for this disaster, where do you think this money should go to? I guess the question is, what should be prioritized if indeed we are able to tap the balance, if there's still a balance of $300 million?
Yes. First of all, Pinky, I am certain that there is a balance because this conversation was only made 2 days ago, actually on the day of the quake, and it has not been accessed yet, which can be accessed and drawn down within 2 days or 48 hours. Second, what are the priorities? It is not for me to say, but if you, ask me, I believe water is so essential. As you mentioned, water filtration systems is very essential. And to be able to have standby electricity, lamps, flashlights, and in the long term, in the midterm and the long term, to reconstruct the homes and to have a permanent evacuation centers. Also, the assessment and the reconstruction of heritage and cultural sites would also be essential in the long term. The immediate need is to be able to make sure that the lives of families who have been affected, basic needs, water, electricity, and of course, food. Of course, we have our own Dream Fund. As you very well know, way back in 2010, the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Law created the council, which created a fund in the national government, which is allocated every year in the General Appropriations Act. And the Dream Fund is able to provide the immediate needs of those who are affected by different natural hazards and disasters. And so marami tayong pagkukunan while there is no action, I believe, yet on the loan. The immediate would be the Dream Fund, and there are agencies of government where we had also allocated their own DRR fund. This used to be called the Calamity Fund, but after the 2010 law, it was renamed the DRR, meaning Disaster Risk Reduction. So the agencies may draw on their DRR fund. Now, kung madalas ang mga trahedya, ang kalamidad, ang natural hazard at naubos na ang ating mga pondo sa ahensya ng gobyerno, the National Dream Fund, which is lodged under the Office of the President and DBM, may replenish the DRR fund of the agencies of government. The local governments also have their own DRR funds. So there are immediate needs sources, both from the LGU and the national government.
So apart from the calamity funds, there are funds coming from the DRR that can be tapped by local government units and even by government agencies.
Yes. I will repeat, the local governments have a percentage of their ERA dedicated for the utilization of calamities such as this under their DRR funds. Second, agencies of government, for example, the OCD, the Office of Civil Defense. Second, the Department of Public Works and Highways. Third, the Department of Agriculture. Fourth, the Department of Education. Selected government agencies have the Dream funds, which are replenishable by the National Dream Fund. I believe that the 2022 GAA, General Appropriations Act, had allocated, if I'm not mistaken, 15 billion pesos for the Dream. This has not been utilized totally. It's only mid-year, and this can be used as well. What we need to do, Pinky, is to hasten, and perhaps make more efficient the drawdown in the utilization. And so the post-disaster needs assessment, of course, must be quick, and it does not take, it's not very difficult to see the needs of the people. There are sources of funds, both from LGU, the national government, and even from the so-called World Bank standby facility.
Okay, we need to talk about the NDRRMC after the break. Should that be strengthened, or do we need to create a new department, a Department of Disaster and Resilience? But we need to take a very short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Pinky Webb. Our source today, Senate President Pro Tempore Loren Legarda. Senator, do we need to create a new department, a Department of Disaster and Resilience, or do we need to just strengthen the NDRRMC?
Number one, Pinky, I'm one of the authors in the House of Representatives when we filed the creation of the Department of Disaster Resilience. So yes, we need a department. However, in what manner, form, structure. That is a contentious issue because the need for disaster risk reduction, of being prepared, of pre-positioning equipment and goods, of having gender sensitive and gender responsive evacuation centers, of having our structures measured and retrofitted. That's a big responsibility. Now, when we create a department, I hope that we do not give our people the false hopes that this would be the solution to all our woes, being visited by more than 20 typhoons and being in a typhoon belt, earthquake fault, and having volcanoes in our country. And so while I am one of the authors of the creation of the department, and second, I feel the strong need to revisit the 2010 law, of which I was co-author, the NDREAM law, I would not say that any bill is actually a model. There is much to be desired, even in the bills that we filed. Remember, we must not be response-oriented. Otherwise, all our gains will be utilized in rehabilitation and reconstruction. We must build right at first sight. The Department of Disaster Resilience must use science, engaging the hazards, vulnerabilities, and the risks. It must utilize the science agencies of government in various departments, whether it is NAMRIA under the DENR, the PAG-ASA, and FIVOX under the DOST, and also those in charge of rehabilitation under the Department of Public Works and Highways. And so it is not the responsibility of one department that needs to be created. I've always said this, Pinky, 20 years ago, it is a whole of government, a whole of society approach where every agency of government must think DRRCCAM. Ano bang ibig sabihin yan? Disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation and mitigation. While earthquakes are not part of the climate change scenario, but this can be exacerbated and worsened by the climate crisis. So the discussions for the creation of a department is essential. What kind of department do we create? That is the most important, because we don't want people to expect we already have the department. At one blow, the department will reconstruct all the eroded mountains and create all the roads and have pre-positioned goods. What if it is not sufficiently funded? What if the science agencies are not part of the department because they are already part of existing departments? And so is this part of our right sizing the bureaucracy? And so I say this as a global champion of DRR, if I may say so myself, for the past 15 years since I worked with the United Nations for disaster risk reduction and have lectured on this in different parliaments of the world. And so I am in favor in what way, manner, form, or structure that has to be discussed thoroughly.
And as you mentioned a while ago, Senator, a lot needs to be discussed indeed with this disaster resilience department. However, I was asking you also this because apart from being an author, there was a statement made yesterday by a colleague of yours, Senator Amy Marcos, saying that let's just strengthen the NDRRMC, make it authority or an administration, rather than create a new department that will have 5 undersecretaries and, to quote her, isang katutak na ASEC. And here is government trying to talk about right sizing. How does this come into play?
Actually, that makes sense as well. As I told you, I was one of the authors before, but I also batted for strengthening the NDREAM law, because I answered you in 2 answers. First, having been an author before, we discussed this in the House of Representatives. But second, having been a co-author of the original law and having studied the multifarious gargantuan needs in times of natural hazards, we cannot give the false hope that the creation of one department, if undermanned or not funded, it cannot solve the problem. So it is not in the name or form of the department. It is in their way of thinking that it should not be response-oriented. And second, for closer, immediate, efficient convergence and collaboration of all the agencies. In fact, right now, the NDREAM Council is headed by the SND, National Defense. Just like the president is heading temporarily the Department of Agriculture, perhaps the president may consider heading the NDREAM law, or we can even amend the NDREAM law so that it is truly a whole of government approach where no less than the president would command. Because we can see, and I saw it in the past congresses, that the drawdown and the utilization of the NDREAM fund can be very, very tedious. The bureaucratic red tape, LGUs have to beg for it. People who are affected by disasters need not beg for help from the national government. And so it would be perhaps wise to strengthen the NDREAM C law of 2010. That's another possibility which may be more doable in light of the right sizing, which, by the way, Pinky, I also authored in the Senate.
And you also have about 10 priority bills. The 19th Congress began its work this week. We need to talk about that after the break. We will be right back.
Baby, I'm home! Happiest ako kapag listo at ganado siyang kumain. Happy and healthy siya sa Nutri-Chunks.
Recommended by my vet. Nutri-Chunks is the only one with active boost and prebiotics na pampalisto. Made with real meat and fortified pa with essential nutrients that help keep him strong,
Healthy and happy.
listo ganado sa Nutri-Chunks.
Regent Mochi, your locally produced glutinous rice cake, comes in mango, green tea, ube, and assorted flavored packs. Regent Mochi Japanese-style glutinous rice cake by Regent.
You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Pinky Webb, our source today. Senate President Pro Tempore Loren Legarda, four-term senator. You are, I believe, the only woman senator to become Senate Majority Leader. And if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, first woman senator to become Senate President Pro Tempore, and the most senior senator in the 19th Congress. Senator, I know that all of you have filed your respective priority bills.
The late former Senator Leticia Ramos Shahani was also Senate President Pro Tempore during her time.
She was. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
I think it was
Senator,
during your father's time.
Must have been, yeah, because I do remember her. So I know that all of you have filed, if not all, most all, have filed your priority bills. Let's just go to this, very important, because face-to-face classes is expected, full face-to-face classes is expected to begin in November. One of your first, or if not your first priority bill, is this One Tablet, One Student Act. How can this be fulfilled? And what I read about this is that you want one tablet for every student in elementary, high school, and even college.
Yes, I know that this would entail funding. Before I filed it in the House of Representatives last year and now refiled in the Senate, Pinky, I consulted the head of finance of the Department of Education. So this is not a knee-jerk reaction to the need of students. And I was informed that there are 26 million indigent, needy students enrolled in DepEd who may not have their own gadgets or device. And there are 1.6 million state universities and colleges students who also are in need. And so the computation was made, and the estimate that at least 80 billion pesos is needed for each device to be given to each student who needs one. Now, do we do it at one blow? The resources may not be feasible. There is a DepEd Computer Modernization Act, Computerization Act within 5 years. I believe that must be accelerated into 1 or 2 years. Pag kailangan, kayang hanapan ng pondo. At nakita natin yan sa mga batas na nagawa natin, gaya ng free quality tertiary education, libreng tuition sa SUCs, na nakita natin sa free irrigation for farmers, na ginawa po natin nung tayo chairman ng Committee on Finance. So I hope this can be passed into law. I know that I have colleagues who have co-authored similar measures, and I hope this can be supported. Just like during our time, perhaps, when we needed pencil and ball pen and paper to be able to work in school, whether it's face-to-face, hybrid, or even online learning, students need gadgets. And this gadget, to me, is like their lifeline, their oxygen to be able to become students who can have the facilities for learning.
You gave a budget. In fact, I looked into the internet how much a tablet is, and I put it at an average of, I don't even know if this would be accurate, Senator, about 3,000. And I came up with a number of about 70 billion pesos. And you just told me that at 26 million indigent plus 1.6 students in state universities and colleges, this would total about 27.6. Yeah, at 80 billion pesos, that's a huge amount of money. And you are confident, basta gustong hanapin, mapopondohan po ito.
As I mentioned, remember the free quality tertiary education that was passed in the middle of the year, meaning the budget was already enacted. GAA was already passed, but we were able to find the funds for that. Remember, Universal Healthcare Act, we were able to find the funds for the initial implementation as well. Kaya paggugustuhin. I hope that we can have the support for this. It's needed. We can even just phase it. Maybe not all the 26 million students, DepEd can determine who are those in dire need. But definitely the need is there. And they have the support through the filed measures, and I hope that I can have the support as well.
Malaking tulong po yan para sa kanila. Senator, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but we did show on screen all your other priority measures. I think the first 4 was really about education, students, Magna Carta for public school teachers, Magna Carta for private school teachers, and upgrading of the minimum salaries of public school teachers. I have 30 seconds left. Can we talk about this, yung minimum salary of public school teachers and personnel? I believe they're at salary grade 11, and you want them increased to what? Salary grade 14 or 15?
15. I filed the Magna Carta for public school teachers, as well as a Magna Carta for increasing the salary, minimum salary also of private school teachers. So there's a grade for teachers in the public schools and a grade for teachers as well, a salary level for teachers in the private schools as well. Yes. This has been, this is not a new measure. I've been refiling this. Yes.
Yeah, you've been refiling this.
Hopefully, this time, I'm not the only one who filed it. There can be more support.
Senate President Pro Tempore Loren Legarda, it's good to see you. Thank you for your time and take care of yourself.
Thank you very much, Pinky. Salamat po sa mga tagapanood. Good morning.
Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.